Alright guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about burnout and specifically how to either avoid it or if you feel like you're in it to kind of recover from it. However, and I'm going to put this in the title, I don't think you're going to like my answer. And I say that because the people who will be drawn to this video are potentially feeling like they are burnt out. And it's funny because I was going to read a load of different definitions off for you of what burnout is, because I like to start these topics, these videos, when we're talking about a specific thing with like a definition. What's really interesting about burnout is that there isn't one. There isn't a singular, universally agreed definition of burnout. What seems to be very common that it's linked to basically chronic stress, but no one seems to be defining it definitively. And that makes me question it quite a bit. I believe burnout has become a bit of an industry, a little bit like diet. One of the best things that has happened in the last 10 to 15 years is a huge rise in awareness and openness around mental health. And having suffered very badly from mental health episodes and issues in the past, I think that's a fantastic thing. However, with that, what has also happened is people who have over-egged it and self-diagnosed and or been misdiagnosed. And I'll be really honest with you, if you feel like you're burnt out, you're probably not. Now, I understand that might be a little bit triggering and you might be thinking, who the heck are you? I'm nobody. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But let me tell you a little bit about what I know about burnout. There's only 2 times in my life when I have genuinely felt anywhere close to what I would call burnout. I don't know if this was burnout, I don't know if this was something worse or something, better. They've both been in the last 5 years, which doesn't really surprise me given what I have challenged myself to do in the last 5 years. One time was, I want to say about 2 years ago. I was in London. I had just finished up a face-to-face personal training session in a studio that I used to train some of my clients in Vauxhall, which is a part of sort of southwest, relatively central London. And I could walk home from there. It was about a 20-minute walk. And I had been really pushing it. I think it must have been around, about February or March 2022. And I was really gunning for it at that point. But I wasn't just working online, I was working face-to-face as well. I now just work online. And it was one of the best decisions I've made, but that's for another day. And I was walking home, and I was probably about 5 minutes into the walk, and I remember it very vividly. I was at Vauxhall bus station. For anybody who knows London, I'm sure you know Vauxhall bus station, it's huge. And I forgot where I lived. I was 33 years old, and it was the middle of the day. I was sober, and I think it was like a Tuesday or something. And I forgot where I lived. Could not remember how to get home. I forgot my address. And all I knew was that it was going to be on my City Mapper, which is an app you can use in London. I don't know where else you can use it, but you can use it in London to like get places. And it was like a saved location. So I knew I was able to find it, and I got my postcode, and I walked home. But needless to say, you can imagine that scared the shit out of me. It was the middle of the day on like a Tuesday. Like I said, I wasn't hungover or drunk or on any drugs or anything like that. And I forgot where I lived. So yeah, that was one experience. The other experience was actually a few weeks ago. I was sitting on my sofa, which is, you can't see it, but it's just there. I was on my laptop working. It was probably about 7 p.m. in the evening. I think it was a Saturday or a Sunday. As you do. Rock and roll lifestyle that I live at the moment. And one side of my face started to go numb. And I was like, oh shit, I'm having a stroke. And thankfully it lasted maybe 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, and it passed. But the longer effect of that was like the fear. I was like, holy shit, like, what was that? Again, not drunk, not hungover, not on any medication. In fact, this time around, haven't been drinking for nearly, coming up on 6 months actually, not a million miles away from 6 months now. And and I still don't think either of those with burnout. And I'm not saying either of that to be like, oh my God, Doug, are you okay? I'm fine, trust me. I'm giving you those examples to illustrate my anecdotal thoughts on burnout and why I think that you are probably not burnt out. I think it's overused now. People will get a bit of a sniffle, feel a little bit anxious, have a headache, or be stressed for like 3 days in a row and casually say to their friends or their boss or their parents or family, partner, blah, 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 I'm so burnt out. The reason I'm saying all of this is because I'm a huge believer in mindset and having the right mindset. And I think it's a skill. It's a skill that can give you unlimited potential. And that's why I'm so passionate about talking about topics like this. Because I'm not saying this to put anybody down or to make people feel worse. I'm saying this to hopefully, if you are feeling like you might have burnout or are scared that you're gonna burn out, I think for the vast majority of people, not everybody, but for the vast majority of people, for the 99%, it's a mindset game. I really do think that it is. And I'm not sitting here saying it's not real, because there are absolutely people who are burnt out who burn out. Because I think this is the other thing as well. When you're burnt out, I think it's quite an acute state from my understanding of it. The people who are actually burnt out. So they burn out and then they basically just stop. They can't do anything. In some cases, they're nearly hospitalized. And then they basically start again. In both of those examples I gave you, when the other Saturday, or I think it was a Saturday, I stopped for like an hour and then carried on again. The time when I forgot my address, I did stop for the rest of that day because I was genuinely like, whoa, okay, I probably need to take it a little bit easy here. But I feel like if you go into a situation or any situation and attach a word like burnout to your identity, it's just basically a form of self-sabotage. And I might be sitting here and there might be someone watching this thinking this guy's a fucking idiot. And that's fine. This is purely anecdotal. But what I do know is that the way we label ourselves, the internal dialogue that we tell ourselves, and the external dialogue that we tell other people, largely shapes our existence on this planet and in this universe. If you tell people you're a night owl or you're not a morning person, guess what? You're gonna hate the fucking mornings. If you tell people you're burnt out, guess what? You're probably gonna burn out. But the way I look at it is, right, there are people on this world who are working harder than me, achieving more than me, and none of them are complaining about being burnt out. Are they 10 times smarter than me? I don't think they are. I'm sure they are smarter than me, but they're working harder with limited resources, because we all have limited resources and limited brain power. They're getting more done and they're not sitting there moaning about burnout. They're just doing it. So I think before we talk about avoiding burnout or what to do if you are burnt out, I think you really need to start with questioning whether you actually are. Honestly, because you're probably not. I don't consider myself to have ever burnt out. And those are probably the 2 times where if anybody was to say you're burnt out, it's probably going to be those. Another way I can tell, statistically speaking, that you're probably not burnt out is purely by the fact that the average 9-to-5 worker, like office worker, does 3.5 hours of focused work per day. And it's not possible to burn out if you're only working 3.5 hours per day, okay? So again, I'm really not saying this to put anybody down. I'm saying this to hopefully shift your mindset if you are in a state where you think you might be burnt out. I don't know if it's real or not. It probably is, but I don't think you're there. However, if you feel like you are on the edge of burnout, then there are some things that I would recommend. Again, anecdotally. Firstly, the big 3, which is pretty much where I get everybody to start with anything if they're feeling ill or upset or maybe even depressed, anxious, whatever it might be. It's the big 3, right? It's your sleep, it's your movement, it's your nutrition. Because more often than not, we might not be able to fix and cure all the problems in the world with those 3. But if you sleep more, if you drink more water, if you eat more protein, and you lift more, you're going to get better. We might not be able to fix the problem, but we might be able to change the trajectory and put you back on a positive path. And that ultimately is the hardest part, that first bit, that starting, that building that momentum. So if you are doing the big three, great, fantastic. You're probably not going to burn out, however hard you're working. However, if you're doing that and you genuinely can be like, no, I'm sleeping 7 hours, I'm drinking 3 liters of water a day, I'm getting 150 grams of protein, I'm lifting in the gym 4 times a week, 3-4 times a week, blah, 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 blah. Okay, then the next step to that is externalizing your issues, because more often than not, we've planted seeds in our head around doubt, around money, around relationships, around work stress, whatever it may be, and we keep it in here and it grows and grows and grows and it outgrows our brain and it makes our heads feel like they're going to explode. Whereas if you actually sit down with someone, whether it's a professional or a friend or a family member, and just talk them through what the internal dialogue that is happening in your head is saying to you, you'll probably realize, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, you will probably realize how ridiculous your thought process has gotten. Because you're not going to speak to a friend about this unless you're really wound up about it, right? Whereas if you sit down with a friend and say, listen, I've got something to tell you, probably before you even say it, you're going to be like, oh, this is going to sound so dumb. But say it nonetheless, because it's good to externalize, it's good to get the thoughts out. Another thing you can do, if you've got no friends, whatever, write it down. So get it out of your head and actually put it on paper or put it on your notes on your phone or your laptop, whatever it might be. Actually write it down, word for word, what is in your head. I've done this many a time. And again, it doesn't cure the issue, but it will help you to make more sense of it. Because the other thing is as well, is that in a point when you feel like you're burnt out, it basically is you're holding on to a lot of information, okay? And if you get that information out of your brain and onto a piece of paper, it's going to help. So that's another big thing. But if you really want to avoid burnout, then be on mission, have a purpose. Because I promise you, if you're working towards something that's bigger than you and you can look far enough down the road and see what you're doing, even if you suffer daily, weekly or monthly L's, you're going to keep going and you'll be amazed. You will not be burnt out. Now I get it. If you're working for someone else and it's a job and you don't really care, but you need the money and you've got families to feed, kids, mortgages, the bills, all of that, I get it. You can't just drop everything and start all over again. But you can still have little side hustles where you're making money, or you could have side hustles in terms of what you're doing with yourself. So you can put yourself on a mission. Could be with your fitness, could be with your health, could be with your knowledge. You might want to learn a new skill, a language, whatever it might be. But even yesterday I spoke to a friend of mine and he was like, you know what, I've been watching some of your stuff and it's kind of inspired me to just get a new project. That's what he wanted. He just wanted a new project. And I was like, I love that. Love that shit. And the weirdest part is that this is someone who I know for an absolute fact is working his ass off already. And he wants to add something else in. He wants to add a new project in because he's working hard. It's not about the hard work. It's about the substance of that work. Whether it's actually enriching your life, make you feel like you're on a mission and driving towards a purpose or not. So that's another big thing. But then the last thing I want to say on this is, let's say you have burnt out. Let's say I'm wrong and you've burnt out and you're watching this lying in a hospital, on a hospital bed, okay? Hope you're okay. Is that the worst thing in the world? You haven't died. You're still watching this. What an experience. And if you have burnt out, you must have worked fucking hard. Like, harder than most people can even imagine to have gotten to that point where you're lying in a hospital bed, genuinely burnt out, where you aren't able to open the curtains, speak to a single person, open the laptop, watch Netflix, have any screens in your face. I'm not sitting here saying we should wear it like a badge of honor, but at the same time, recognize that you must have done something pretty damn monumental to burn out. And you didn't die, and you're still here. And guess what? If you're that type of person and you've genuinely burnt out, you will get up and you will go again. I absolutely know that, because the personality type of the people who get to that point, they ain't the type of person who quits. They're going to pick themselves up and they're going to go again. So guess what? If you're burnt out, it was probably worth it, because it's probably gotten you a hell of a lot closer to your goals than you were before. So it's a controversial topic. I believe that it's basically just become an industry. It's become something that a lot of people stand behind, have made their identity, have labeled themselves with, basically just to get themselves out of stuff. That's my view on it. I could be wrong. I don't really care. I'm just telling you my point. So I hope that was useful. Genuinely, like I said, I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm not trying to glamorize this stuff. I'm just trying to give you my perspective on a topic that is quite prevalent these days. I think we're all capable of a lot more than we think we are. And I'll leave you with that. I'll see you tomorrow.